We've all buried bodies in our lifetime,
Yeah.
figuratively or literally for some, and no judgment.
But I think get hold of Robert. Has anything happened there? Tell me about it. Hello and welcome to episode 46 of Rockstar CMO FM. The M is for marketing, the F is for well you decide. As you're probably wondering, does the world need another effing marketing podcast? I'm your host, Ian Truscott, editor of Rockstar CMO, your regular hit of marketing street knowledge. And this weekly podcast serves as my excuse to chat with my friends, marketers, writers, and CMOs I've met through my career leading marketing teams and consulting for B2B brands. You can find us at rockstarcmo.com and Rockstar CMO on LinkedIn and Twitter. This episode was recorded on Friday the 22nd of January. It's been quite a week for my American friends. And wherever you are, I hope you've had a good week and you are well, safe, and staying as sane as you feel you need to be. We have another packed set list this week. Rockstar marketing advisor Jeff Clark joins me to discuss whether a marketing trend or technique is a one-hit wonder or Wonderwall. I catch up with my chum, Cathy McKnight, to chat about marketing technology and some of the best practice in implementing it. And I again kick off my weekend with my friend and content marketing guru, Robert Rose, in the Rockstar CMO virtual bar. Right, let's get started, shall we? On to our first segment. Marketers love to be down with the cool kids, don't we? Dancing to the latest sound, but will that tune stand the test of time? Each week, my chum, Jeff Clark, Rockstar CMO advisor and former Cirrus Decisions Forrester research director, joins me in deciding if that marketing tune, topic, technique or trend is a one-hit wonder or Wonderwall. Let's find out what's hot or not this week. Welcome, Jeff, back to One Hit Wonder and Wonderwall. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me back.
Oh, nice absolutely. This week. Absolutely. How's your week been?
Week has been good. This is inauguration week. So, the turning of the pages and things like that. So it's been very exciting here.
Yeah, excellent. Well, I'm going to come up with a topic this week. And I've got an excellent one for you. How do you feel about growth?
Well, at about 6'3", I've been growing 6'3". I've been growing for quite a long time now. Actually, I probably stopped growing at some point. But anyway, I don't want to get into the personal issues. But
all right. Well, what I'm actually referring to is and this comes from something I was reading. I was looking at LinkedIn and I saw some ads for growth marketers. And I was thinking to myself, what's the difference between a growth marketer and a marketer? Because I believe the marketing is about creating growth. And so I tweeted, what's the difference between a growth marketer and growth? And I got some really good responses. And one of them was from a chap called Ollie Sharman. They're taller. So that's an excellent reference to your own height there. So growth
that's right.
marketers
are taller. That's right.
But so what do you think? Do we see? What I want to ask you is, do you?
I only hired marketers that were above average height, by the way. So I guess I ran growth marketing.
So what's your view on the term growth marketing? And should we be sticking growth on the front of everything we say? And I think then maybe we'll move on to the hacking term, but maybe save that for in a bit. So what do you think of growth marketing?
Well, I think I guess I always ruffle is that the right term for it? Whatever. It's
I don't know what you're going to do.
Things where it's like, okay, let's insert a new term. And then the more you dig in it, you realize, oh, well, that's either what we've been doing all along, or it's just trying to add something that spices it up. But marketing in general is this in support of the selling function, and the selling function always wants to grow, and that's just sort of part of the human nature of the sales and the people running the business. Mm-hmm. Now, you can have different strategies, because you can have a strategy that's like, for a particular segment of customers, you're just in retention mode. And then that might be fine, or you might be in a segment where this is one of the things that we often try to, sort out with clients in terms of their planning, or in a particular segment, are you trying to grow? Are you trying to retain customers? Are you trying to exit a market? Because you might literally just, you've got a market segment and you're just trying to get out of it while you're trying to grow something else. In the aggregate, you're trying to grow the company.
Yes.
But then if you break down to different strategies, it's not always about growth. And so therefore growth marketing, it may be that, we're in a, and this gets into the growth hacking concept, is that we may be in a startup, or we may be in something where we're just totally focused on trying to accelerate growth as fast as possible. And I want people who, understand that, have been in those situations, know how to do that type of.
So are you kind of defending it then? Do you think it's right for us, if we're advertising for a marketer, that we make it clear that we're looking for a growth marketer? Because to me, it suggests that there's another kind of marketer.
Yeah. I know. I guess it is, growth as a strategy can certainly be appropriate, but I think all marketers need to be able to have the skills to work among the different strategies, and growth is what the company overall wants to do. So I think growth marketing is marketing.
And one thought I had on this, and I've sort of talked about this in the past, is, do you think that that there are marketers? I don't want to say we. Do you think there are marketers that have forgotten that's the role of marketing, and they've sort of hopped on the hamster wheel of execution and miss that kind of higher goal for the company and not connected to that?
Well, I definitely think there are marketers who, as you said, hopped on the execution hamster wheel, and it's like they're only about executing a particular thing, and they're not thinking about the larger company strategy, which we talked about a couple episodes ago. And it's like, so if a marketer is not tied into strategy and understanding what sales and product teams are trying to do, then they're ultimately not going to be successful, or they're going to be viewed only as execution experts. And in certain, I think there's certain areas like events or whatever, where, people may be just comfortable doing their execution arm. But they're never going to get out of that. They're never going to grow themselves out of that role. And they won't be viewed as vital to the company if they don't understand what the broader company strategy is, which is typically, unless you're in an exit mode, is typically focused on growth.
I mean, for me, I think all marketers should be focused on growth, and I think it helps ask the right questions. I mean, even if you are, as you say, somebody who really enjoys putting on events, and that has that real execution element to it, the structure of the event, what you need to do. It's a real sort of project management type role, and it's quite rewarding for people. But still, if somebody asks you, we want to do a webinar next week, or we want to do this event, if you have a growth mindset, then you're like, how is this going to help with or if you're hooked into the company goals, you're going to ask why, aren't you?
Why? And how am I going to be measured at the success? Is the success for me getting net new clients? Is it for making our existing clients feel better? Is it, are we focused on retention? You always want to be asking the why, and how am I going to be measured to be successful?
Yeah, absolutely.
Which gets back to the ultimately, how the goals of the company ladder down to every team and every individual.
So because the last two we talked about agile and we talked about digital and digital marketing. And it seems to me like both of those things, really having a growth mindset is a competency that we need to bring as marketers. It doesn't define you as a marketer.
Yes, right. And I think I remember, in terms of like digging into competencies, one of the areas we'd often identify as the business, your business savvy. Yeah. So, you've got a particular role in the company, but do you understand how to determine what the company's strategies are and what your role in that is, and not that you're trying to run the company, but you need to understand enough to say, I understand what my part is.
Yeah. And then you mentioned the word hacking, and I think maybe the term hack probably needs its own segment on the show. But for me, those two things seem to be synonymous. When people say growth, they say hacking. I don't like the reference to hacking, partly because I hate the way that we keep picking up these terms from product development and from coding all the time, and seem to get aligned to marketing. But the thing for hacking for me is finding a shortcut to do something that isn't, structurally good or a best practice or something. It's just you're trying to get somewhere as fast as you can without doing the hard work. Is that your interpretation of hacking? It's like, well, you don't want to do the hard work. You just want to get there really fast, but you don't really care about the structure you're putting in place around something.
Well, my first reaction to the word hacking, having my identity stolen for somebody to file unemployment claims here, and having to spend a day of making sure all my accounts were safe.
Wow.
Anytime the word hacking comes up, it's just like raises my hackels.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're connected, but
yeah.
But the gentleman who created the term, what was it, Sean Ellis, back in 2010. I don't think hacking was necessarily understood to be as bad as it is today. The idea is that you're trying to break down silos. But again, it becomes another term that there were other terms for this before. And people were doing these things before, and by just putting a sexy new term on it, like hacking and the growth and hacking and marketing, is all of a sudden like, oh, this guy's got something new. So in terms of self-promotion, he gets thumbs up. In terms of the reality is that people have put together tiger teams and pilot teams and agile teams, and And they're all about bringing, my understanding, they're all about bringing cross collaboration, breaking down silos, and having people like focus in on there's something we need to do differently to generate growth. What is that? And I think the growth hacking term is particularly applied, at least what Sean Ellis was doing was looking at customer journeys and seeing where we could fix things along the journey. So it's marketing, sales, it's product, it's support, it's all the functions.
But that's hard work.
Again,
that kind of analysis is hard, but that isn't a hack. That's actually changing your marketing processes, isn't it?
And that's where I think the term hacking is inappropriate.
Yeah.
It's just there to get somebody's attention. Ooh, what's that? And then
when everybody describes themselves as a ninja for a bit.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So
what would you replace if somebody believes that they are a growth hacker? Well, we believe that they're just marketers or salespeople, so the growth thing can go. But what would you describe somebody who thinks that they're a hacker? Just somebody who's really good at demand gen or something?
I would say you've got to find a different. I don't know. You've got to sort of get down to reality and understand that you're just trying to be as good a marketer as possible. And you're trying to, I remember, working in like when I was working in startups, it's like, I would work and I would collaborate with engineers and tech support, and we would socialize and everybody's together, and you have a better understanding of the broader challenges that the whole company has, and you're surrounding the customer because, you're only a several $1 million company, and you're trying to like ramp up as quickly as possible to get this to some point where you're going to be successful or sold or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's not anything that is particularly new. And I don't know if this is my own perspective, is the more we realize that a lot of what we're trying to do is not new, we're just trying to get really good at it, the better off we'll be.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's going to be a common theme in some of the topics that we pick, right? Is that we're giving things names when actually it's just that we're refining the craft that's been around for so long, right?
And that's where these become one-hit wonders because they're exciting for a short period of time, and then people realize that there's, or as you were saying earlier, it's like they realize, to be a growth hacker it takes a lot of hard work, it takes a lot of discipline and rigor, and it's like, oh boy, this is tough. I got to get good at this,
Yeah. Okay, so you just mentioned one hit wonder, and I think from what I'm gauging from our conversation that we believe that growth, and particularly when applied to the term growth hacker, is a one-hit wonder. Growth marketing or growth hacking is one-hit wonder. What do you have as a one-hit wonder for us this week? I think you were looking at the charts of one-hit wonders.
I think one of the top one-hit wonders is the song "Turning Japanese" by the Vapors back in the 80s. So I know my last one I think was from '69. So now I'm moving on to the 80s, and what was interesting as I checked out the song is that the band delayed the release of the song to be their second release because they didn't want to be a one-hit wonder. They wanted to have two hits. But the first release or whatever, and I don't even know what the name of the song was. The first release was not a hit. So Turning Japanese became their one-hit wonder, and they have I don't know. Nobody knows what they're off to these days. Nobody's saying, what are those guys doing today? What's their latest album?
I also really like the idea that we're talking about language and they were talking about turning Japanese. And I think that, so that's an excellent way to leave this.
And there were a bunch of English guys who apparently thought they were, I don't know, I don't want to get too much into the psychology of the song, but they literally thought they were turning into something else.
Yeah.
And therefore, they picked Japanese. I mean, they could have said they're turning Songolese or something. But it was catchy.
Yes, absolutely. And as is the term growth hacking, but we think it's a one-hit wonder. So off it goes. Well, thank you very much, Jeff. And I look forward to the next term we'll come up with and chatting to you next week. See you then.
Sounds great. See you later.
I got your picture. I'd like a million of you over myself. I want a doctor to take a picture so I can look at you from inside as well. You got me turning up and turning down, I'm turning in, I'm turning right, I'm turning Japanese. I think I'm turning Japanese, I really think so. Turning Japanese, I think I'm turning Japanese, I really think so. Turning Japanese, I think I'm turning Japanese, I really think so. Turning Japanese, I think I'm turning Japanese, I really think so.
So there we have it. Prefixing marketing with growth is a one-hit wonder. And don't get us started on hacking. All to the sound stylings of Turning Japanese by the Vapors from 1980. And I love that Jeff did his research. Turning Japanese, a song about losing your identity, is a great analogy for the stuff we marketers come out with sometimes to describe our profession. And I suspect I'll have that song in my head all day. Please let us know what you think of this topic and our new segment. You know where to find us. We're at Rockstar CMO on Twitter and LinkedIn. This week's guest is one of my industry analyst and consulting chums, Cathy McKnight, VP of Strategy and Consulting and Chief Solver of Problems with the Content Advisory. With 20 years of global experience and expertise in content strategy, content management, intranets, marketing technologies, and customer experience at the Content Advisory, Cathy has helped dozens of companies realize their content marketing and communication objectives by building bridges across the leadership, content management, business process, and technology. Cathy is a frequent speaker at events such as ContentTECH, Content Marketing World, CMO Summit Europe, and the Gilbane Conference on content technology and customer experience. I hope you enjoy this conversation. Welcome, Cathy, to Rockstar CMO FM. How are you?
I'm very well, Ian. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, you're very, very welcome. And Cathy, what is it that you do for people that don't already know you?
I am the VP of Strategy and Consulting and Chief Solver of Problems with the Content Advisory. So you know my colleague Robert very well. You're recurring clinking of glasses with him on your podcast.
Yes. I will be meeting him later in the virtual Rockstar CMO bar.
Excellent. One of these days we'll have to congregate the three of us.
Oh, and in real life as well. I know that.
Yes.
Would be awesome. That would be awesome. Obviously, I actually knew you before I knew Robert, so I can't say that I know you through Robert. It's just that we know each other.
Yes.
Now, your background, as I know, and our listeners may not know, is firmly in content technology and in implement on the implementation side, the advisory side. Is that what you're doing now with the content advisory?
Yeah. So my career's been all over the place. Always in content, in internal comms, external comms, website, you name it. But with content advisory, we do a lot of the advisory, like I've always done or have recently done, with regards to helping organizations on their content, more MarTech now they're calling it. They're moving away from calling it content tech, but also really focusing on the strategy side of things. So their engagement strategies, audience experience strategies, content strategies, but often that ties in the technology side of things, which is great because that's still where my brain goes. So it's lovely to be able to stay in that field.
Yeah. I'm still old school, calling it content technology. Clearly, I don't think I've moved.
Keep up with the acronyms.
I don't think I've moved beyond web content management, let alone everything else. So
you might want to update that one.
I know. I've seen you speak a few times, and when we in the before times, I think is what Robert calls it, when we used to go to events and see each other and spend time with each other. And one of the presentations I saw you give a couple of years ago was you described. I'll stop saying content technology. I'll talk marketing technology, and it's probably true of any technology implementation. You talk about it in terms of building a house because you've got a reputation for building on your house, haven't you? So, how does that analogy work when it comes to marketing technology?
Yeah, I remember that conference. That was Munich during Oktoberfest. That was a lot of fun. I think that was my trip. I had an impromptu daycation in St. John's, Newfoundland, because there was a medical emergency on my flight and we had to land.
Oh my gosh!
Fun time. See, all the things we're missing from not traveling.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but I mean, tomorrow, if somebody said to you, "You're going to fly to Germany, but by the way, there's going to be a medical emergency on the plane. You're going to have to land somewhere." Would you jump on that plane and just go, yes?
I would be packed and at the airport so fast, you have no idea. No, it was actually total sidebar. Sorry, we'll get back to your question in a second. Yeah. It was a lovely day. We had to stop and we had to spend 12 hours there because the flight crew would be past the
hours.
Their hours on the plane by the time they got it all sorted. So I'd never actually been to St. John's, Newfoundland, which is lovely. They have these things, they're called jelly bean houses, and it's right on the ocean. Wow. So like lovely cliffs and stuff. So I had an absolutely spectacular day. Ted Rubin was also on my flight. He went to the hotel to sleep, and he was, after we were talking about it, he was very sorry that he didn't join in on the tour that they arranged for us. So
wow, that's cool. Yeah. I should actually have said that. Whereabouts am I speaking to you today, Cathy?
Oh, I am in Toronto, Ontario, which is in Canada. So
very nice.
Yes, firmly on lockdown, like much of the rest of the world.
Yeah. I keep doing this with my guests. I just start getting into the subject matter and forgetting to ask them about themselves and how they are. But there we go. So back to this analogy of building the house, and I really liked it because you were talking about how that relates to putting together your marketing technology stack. How does that analogy work for you?
So for me, I really like it because it starts with a foundation, right? So we often want to jump to the building part, right? You want to gather all your materials, you want to get the wood and the 2x4s and the insulation and whatnot, and start building. And if you start building like that, your house isn't going to stand for very long, if at all. Yeah. So I really like that the fact that it focuses on, really, you want to know what your house is going to look like before you start building it, right? And before that, you have to have some ideas of what's possible. You're not going to plan to build a 4,000 square foot home on a 20 by 40 foot lot. That's not a good plan. No planning department is going to approve that. Right. And the same thing goes for any kind of content project, whether you're talking about setting up a content center of excellence and changing how your content ops works, or whether you're talking about implementing a content management system or any other kind of MarTech, particularly at the enterprise level. You don't know if you have the approvals or the resources to do so. So why would you start doing something that ultimately you're not going to be able to pull the trigger on and execute? So from my perspective, any successful initiative has to start with companies getting aligned and getting real about their goals, their visions, and the value proposition. The company's going to want to know what's in it for them.
Yeah. Yeah. I really like that sort of foundational thinking because, you and I have been around the. Well, I don't want to say CMS again. You make me when I used that term earlier on. The marketing technology.
It's still very relevant. There's still content management systems. People seem to be calling them DXPs, but that's a whole other podcast conversation.
That definitely is, and it's probably something for later when we talk about the swimming pool. But anyway, I really like, because you're absolutely right. People rush into buying tools and they rush into doing that implementation really fast. What do you think? When you're advising clients, where do you walk them to in terms of where they should start in terms of diagnosing some of these issues that they have?
I think it's turning the lens back on themselves, being really introspective and lifting up, where some of the bodies might be buried and looking under the rock, so to speak. Yeah. And, we've all buried bodies in our lifetime, figuratively or literally for some, and no judgment.
But I think get hold of Robert. Was anything happen there? Tell me about it.
It's about understanding what you have currently. Mm-hmm. And what works and what doesn't. We firmly do not believe in change for the sake of change. So if something's working, you leverage that and you continue on with that, and you look to correct the things that aren't working. Often organizations they focus on what they do well, right? So if they're really good at social, they keep investing in social. The team gets bigger and they start doing more and they start maturing in that level. And what falls and lies fallow are the things that they're not so good at because they don't understand them, and it's infinitely harder, right? So trying to bring everything up to a level that's similar, so you don't have these big troughs and valleys. Of despair, sort of thing, these peaks of excellent where you're really excelling, and the customer, along the customer experience journey, it's going swimmingly. You're getting a lot of MQLs and SQLs, and it's all great. And then, they hit this trough of despair because, well, that's really hard and we don't really understand that. So you know what? We'll work on that later. Let's keep doing the stuff we're good at.
Yeah. But do you think that sometimes, we kind of, our behavior is led by what we're measured on, right? So when you're on that wave, aren't you, of increasing web hits and, oh my God, we've got loads of new followers and clicks and all that kind of stuff. Is that, do you think that's what's driving that behavior as well, as people get good at stuff?
I think it is and it isn't. We've all grown. I mean, my career has been all over the place, always to do with content, but, from internal comms, I was an SAP consultant. I've implemented CMSs. And so you get into a rut, what you know, there's a saying, which again, another trope, you know what you don't know, and then you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And until you start looking for those true unknowns, so looking outside of, not just what your organization does, but outside and what other successful ones are doing to identify, hey, you know what, we should be doing more of that. I think that's one of the real true values that TCA brings to our clients is that we've had the privilege, and I mean that sincerely, of working with some amazing organizations, from names that everybody would recognize to huge, massive companies that I had never heard of until we got engaged with them. And we bring that wealth of information to our clients, right? So we were able to say, this worked here. I'm not saying that's going to work for you, but we've seen it work, and this is how it works. So it's getting the help, and a lot of times there's people within the organization who have some of those insights. But it's about talking to, it's that cross-pollination between teams. It's not breaking down the silos. I never say that. You will never hear me say that. But it's about making the information and the data within them permeable.
Yeah. I've heard that as well, that silo busting is you can't do that, because we naturally silo as people around our teams and around our departments and stuff like that. It's about making them porous, isn't it? It's about enabling them to share. What do you think is so when you're looking at all of these organizations, you're taking that kind of holistic view of their content strategy and their content technologies or their marketing technologies, where are you seeing the gaps? I mean, without naming names, where do you see some trends around what people should be paying attention to right now?
Data.
Yeah.
I mean,
Which is
we've
a
been
surprising answer, actually.
I know, isn't it? You'd think we'd have our arms around that by now. We've been talking about it for so long.
Yeah.
But again, I think companies are overwhelmed by the amount of data they have access to and that they're collecting, that they don't know what to do with it. I have always been a proponent of, make sure your goals are SMART, the acronym, and start with a few. So, what are you measuring? Why are you measuring?
Yeah.
Who's going to own it? And what are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
And you need to be able to answer those 4 questions for everything that you're keeping track of. And sometimes the answer is, we just want to see where it's going. And that's okay. But you've got to acknowledge that.
Yeah.
Right. And there still needs to be ownership, and there still needs to be a recognition. Okay, there's nothing to action on it for now.
Yeah.
Because you can't act on it all. So you got to know what's important.
That's really good, because it isn't. Yeah. And I like the nuance there. It isn't actually access to data or the collection of data we have a problem with. It's what do you do with it, and are you collecting the right things? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the lack of insight, and so that and is that something you're really seeing that's common around like big and small organizations you're working with?
Yes, what we really try and encourage is that the teams be more data driven.
Yeah.
So to your point, and this was going to get into my swimming pool rant, but you've got to look at why you're doing things.
Yeah.
So understand what the purpose is, and that for most companies now has to start with audience.
Yeah.
Who are you talking to? Why are you talking to them? What makes them a good target for what you're creating?
Yeah.
And then back to your question about technology and gaps, and I think the other one is getting their hands around what they have. So understanding what content they have available to them, and again, tying it back to the data, what works.
Yeah, I think that would be a whole nother topic for another interview, because I think one of the things that I'm curious about is the gap between what capability an organization has purchased or can do but isn't leveraging, and the other one is really where organizations' maturity is compared to where the industry of tools thinks the industry is at. Do you see what I mean? Like,
yes.
The vendors and the analysts seem to be off solving these amazing problems out in the future, and yet in many organizations the problem is far more fundamental to them, but it's actually a simpler problem.
Yes, you hit it bang on there, because one of the things that as an analyst, working with the vendors and the agencies that they rely or come to us, the smart ones do, is, here's our roadmap. Are we aligned with what customers are, one, looking for, and two, capable of? And there are many in the industry who are light years ahead of 90% of their existing as well as future audience. So, scaling it back and show them the vision, because everybody buys the vision. They don't buy what's today.
Yeah.
You don't go out looking for a car, that has only, circa 2018 availability and functionality. You're okay. What's 2021 bringing? What's 2022 bringing? That's what I want.
Yeah. That's yes, and I'm just realised the time. I need to get on with my questions here.
Okay.
One of it's tremendous, Cathy, and I think we'll definitely need to probe into some of these, whether I press record when we do it or not. But always fascinating chatting to you. And one of the things I wanted to pick up on, because I've heard you talk about this before, is what do you think is the important element in when you're diagnosing these problems? And I think I probably know the answer, but anyway, is it the technology that these organizations are purchasing, or is it the way the technology has been implemented? Which is the most important thing?
The latter, 100% the latter. You can, I'm sure this will, be repeat for you, but you can have a mediocre or even poor technology, and if you have the right team, an implementation team that understands what you're trying to do, what the long-term game is, and really understands the solution and how to make it sing, you're going to end up with a good implementation. It may not be great because just, by virtue of what the technology offers, but you could buy top of the line, the best, what's considered quote unquote, the best out there. And if you have a team who doesn't understand your business goals and the way the rest of your organization works and how the rest of your technology installation works, you're in for a world of hurt. And we've seen it over and over and over again.
My contribution to this particular topic is because I used to be in pre-sales, as I think years and years ago when I started my career back in the day. I worked for a few content management vendors, and I went from one vendor to the other vendor, and we were obviously selling to a vendor that I'd worked for, and the client was complaining that this particular platform couldn't do what they wanted to do, and they were looking to switch. And I knew full well that their current platform could actually do what they wanted to do. It's just, it was so poorly implemented that they just couldn't figure out how to make it work, and they couldn't do it. So I had to sit in this meeting with a straight face going, yes, we can solve that problem for you with this brand new technology, thinking to myself, well, if they implement it the same way, it's not going to help. So I love that point from you, Cathy. Thank you very much. So
and I think
final question.
Just one more point on that. I think companies are getting smarter because we are having organizations come to us now and not say, I need a new, insert MarTech here. It's, can you help us understand what we have and how do we make the most out of it?
Yeah. I think that's, I'm glad to hear that, to be honest, Cathy, because so many, I think, organizations overbought and then haven't really realized that if they take a fresh look at what they have and maybe re-implement what they have, it's going to be as good as spending millions on the procurement process of something new.
Yes.
Yeah. No, good. All right. Well, I'm going to get to our final question, Cathy, and you did allude to it just a moment ago. We have a regular feature here on Rockstar CMO called The Swim Pool, our portal to hell for all the BS, snake oil, and misplaced hype around this marketing craft we love. What would you throw in there?
Well, I think, you see, we brought up DXP and I want to change my answer now, but I think I'll stick with what I had originally thought was the whole concept that more is better when it comes to content. Mm-hmm. More is better is rarely true. Okay, it might be true when it comes to like ice cream or good wine, but not when we're talking about content, right? We have so many clients that just create content willy-nilly. It's just, piece after piece after piece. And this is partially due to how they're measured, like you mentioned, right? They create a quantitative based plan at the beginning of the year. They're going to do 4 podcasts and 6 blog posts and 20 tweets and one white paper, et cetera, per quarter. Yeah. So that's what they spend their time doing, recording the podcast and writing the blog posts. Yeah. But they don't check to see if anybody's working, if any of it's working, right? So is anybody listening to the podcast? Are the blog posts being read, shared? Are the calls to actions being triggered? Yeah. How many MQLs and SQLs are resulting from the effort? Because while, it's not the be all end all, those are important measurements to have as a marketing organization.
Yeah, that's a brilliant thing. No, I love that. We'll definitely be throwing that in swimming pool because I've actually had that conversation where somebody was talking to me about creating a content function within a business and wanting to measure that function by how much they produced. And it's like, no, what you need to, and it's a much harder metric to find, but what you want to do is find a metric around relevance or or about how engaging something is or how it's contributing to the business bottom line. If you measure people on the amount they produce, they'll produce a lot.
Yes, absolutely. That's all they're going to do, right? Yeah, and it's about producing targeted content, making sure it gets to where it needs to be at the right time in front of the right people for visibility. Because, the more content that's targeted, the more visibility it's going to get. And it never works the other way around. Because
you're competing with your own audience, with your own content.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's excellent. So we'll throw too much content into the Rockstar CMO swimming pool. And thank you very much for your time, Cathy. When people spin the dial on the interwebs, where will they find you?
On the regular interweb or the dark web? No.
There's more to you, Cathy, than meets the eye.
I I'm in the usual spaces like LinkedIn. My Twitter handle is at Cathy McKnight, all one word. Don't forget the K in McKnight. And of course, ContentAdvisory.net is our website where Robert and I do a lot of blog posts, rants, raves. I just did one on, I don't know if you saw the Sitecore announcement this week.
Yes. 1.2 billion.
And the press release said nothing. Did you read it? It was
yeah. I mean, you know that I've got chums over there, so I was very interested.
Yeah, so I did a little rant on that, so that's on there if anybody wants to check it out.
I should imagine people that listen to this will probably be interested in your view on that, so I'll include a link to that in the show notes, as well as, I mean, ContentAdvisory.net already gets a link in the show notes because I talk to Robert every week. So thank you very much, Cathy. It's actually Friday evening here, and so I wish you a very nice weekend.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining me on Rockstar CMO.
Thanks for having me anytime.
Cheers, Cathy. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Love chatting to Cathy. Good to be reminded of seeing her speak in Munich and hanging out at Oktoberfest. Hopefully get back to doing those things again soon. Sticking to the drinking theme, but keeping it virtual, it's Friday evening and time for me to join our mutual chum and make my way to the Rockstar CMO virtual bar, where I hope to find my friend and content marketing guru, Robert Rose. Good evening, Robert. What are you drinking?
Oh, hello, my friend. It is nice to see you here in the bar. And yeah, let's drink. It's been a couple of weeks of fun here in the U.S. So here's a drink that we have, and this is going to sound weird. I fully admit this at the top, but one of the things that I forgot to do because of everything going on in the transfer of 2020 into 2021 was one of the things I like to do is make wishes for the year. You know, I do my journaling and I set my goals and I do all that sort of thing. We also make wishes, right? You know, sort of like, I wish this will happen. I wish that would happen.
Yeah.
And one of the things that my family and I do is that we make what we call our 5 New Year's wishes. And so we got the chance to do that. And so it was, I thought we would do it over a cocktail. And here's the cocktail. You basically mix, and I know it's going to sound weird, but you mix 5 different tequilas, enough to make one healthy shot. You don't get 5 shots. I mean, let's not work.
I'm sure you do in the Robert household.
Yeah, one healthy shot of a mix of 5 different, and stick with one type of tequila. I went with a Reposado here. And then each little part, the 20% that you're doing of each Reposado represents one of your wishes. Then you mix it with, and this is also going to sound weird, and I don't even know if you can get this, much less would you have it in your bar. But one of the things I'm really enjoying over the last 6 months, as it has become legal here in Los Angeles, are these wonderful cannabis focused drinks. And there is a grapefruit rosemary one. It's like almost like a sparkling wine, if you will, or a sparkling juice. It tastes, and it's got a tiny amount of I can drink a whole one and not feel anything. So, lest your listeners sort of think it's over the top here, it's not. And we do that because basically 2020 is gone, and we're going to get high on 2021, basically. So that's the drink, right? It's these 5 Reposados mixed with this grapefruit rosemary cannabis drink. That's a bit of a sparkling drink, and it's fantastic. The taste of it is just lovely, and of course you have one of those and you're done.
Well, I'm sure you are. I don't think any of that, most of that is illegal here.
Yeah. Right. So the entire drink is illegal there.
I feel I probably should do a warning at the beginning of the show. But don't do this at home, kids. So let me attempt with my my completely legal in this country. I know that you're not doing anything illegal there, but replicate that here. So did you put ice in that?
Yes, indeed. Yes, there is ice in it. Yeah.
Splendid. And the 5. What I'm going to do, because I seem to miss my Reposado tequila again on the desk this week. So all I've found really is some Hendrick's gin. So let's open that up. And
this would work well with a gin, I have to say. This sparkling juice works.
Yeah, it sounds good. Good. I wonder if I'm
a bit of a different take on a tonic.
Yeah. Yes. Well, let me slot. What did you say? 5 little amounts. I've stuck in probably 10. A good slug of that. Right, let's go with the I'm just going to go with some what have I got here? I have some cucumber tonic water. Fever Tree. Completely and utterly legal. Kids, you can drink this to your heart's content without the gin. Let me have a sip of that. Oh, that's very nice. That's very nice. And what did we call that, Robert?
All I've been calling it is the 5 New Year's wishes, right?
Yes.
So it's, wishing for a great new year.
Yes, and I definitely would wish for a great new year on one of these. This is delicious, and I could drink these every week. Thank you, Robert. So we are we making our wishes, and whereabouts are we going to be doing that, Robert?
Well, here's the thing. I have, and this is another place I was thinking about, given that it is the dog days of winter here. And
I like the way that California has dog days of winter. I mean,
we have our moments. We have our moments. And
sorry, I'll shut up.
I think, and this is a place I have not been that I've always wanted to go, and perhaps you've been there, is along, I don't know if Cannes is the place to go, but basically somewhere along the coast of France.
Yes.
And I've never been, and I've always wanted to go, and so that seems like a place for this kind of drink.
Yes, it certainly does. Although I'm not sure you're going to be able to get that mixer there either, but I'm not sure. So it might be more of an Amsterdam thing. But
that's true. That is true.
We're sipping these. I presume that we're overlooking the wonderful boats, the beautiful sea, some sort of wonderful little French cafe, maybe on the pavement. Perhaps.
Right. Like along. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, overlooking the water, warm day.
Lovely. And you've recovered from your jet lag and the fact that you've managed to sneak a bottle of this drink into France. What will we be discussing once we've talked to you through customs?
Well, an idea that I've been thinking about. I don't know if you've noticed. But over the last month, call it 2 months, there's been a frenzy, and in fact, one news article even called it a frenzy, of investment firms buying Rockstar music catalogs. Bob Dylan was sort of the tipping point, right? That happened about a month ago or so, where Bob Dylan sold his entire back catalog of songs to Universal Music Group for $300 million. And then there was a couple of others that happened. And literally just a week and a half or 2 weeks ago, you had you basically had KKR, an investment firm, a private equity firm, buying Ryan Tedder, who probably his name doesn't mean much to you, but he's a producer who basically produced folks like Beyonce and other R&B stars, and has his whole music catalog and sold it for $100 million.
Wow!
And so these are artists who have sort of cashed in on their back catalog of content. And it brought up an interesting question for me, which is, how much is our catalog worth?
Yeah.
Right. So if I went back and valued, one of my favorite blogs of all time, it was a little blog called Hovering Over the Back Button. And if I went back and looked at that content, or if I look back at Rockstar CMO and the back catalog there, what's it worth? Right? It's worth something.
Probably tell you.
Worth something.
Yeah.
And, and the way that I like to phrase that question is, I said, and I'd actually asked this of somebody, I said, look at your competitor, right? The competitor whose blog or webinar program or content program you are just enamored with, right? So, the Red Bull or the Kraft or the Lego or the, whoever your competitor would be that you would just, you drool over their content library. Yeah. How much would you pay for it? Yeah. And how much would they pay for yours? And that is a really interesting question, I think, that is going to become more and more relevant as the other thing that we've really noticed over the last couple of months is the number of acquisitions have grown in the space of brands buying media companies, not to mention the sort of the last one that we just talked about on our podcast a week or two ago was Wyndham Hotels buying Travel and Leisure magazine. So these back catalogs of content from brands I think are going to become a very interesting asset for businesses as they start getting valued. And one of the things that I think as marketers we need to be cognizant of is, how are we managing that back catalog and leveraging the value that it might potentially have?
Yeah, no, that's that is really interesting, because we're obviously not exactly writing Bob Dylan songs here, but I presume somebody is listening to it and has a modicum of enjoyment of what we're talking about, and therefore it's got some value to them. Please leave in the comments how much you think it's worth. So on a sliding scale, you are worth something, right?
Right. It's the, so if you go and look at how economists operate with the value of companies or industries or, assets basically at a broad level, right? You tend to look at what they call kinetic value, which is the value of that asset based on performance, right? In a marketplace, right? So if we're thinking of kinetic value, it's of a business, it's how much revenue did it produce, how much, what are its cost of sales, et cetera, right? So you look on its performance in the marketplace and you go, how does it perform? And you associate some amount of value with that if you want to purchase it. But then economists will talk about, and this is a sliding scale, just to your point, potential value. And that's different, right? That's the multiple that you would put on value based on things that are not as tangible, right? Rarity or the quality of it or the potential for what a particular buyer could do with it. And that's in the eye of the beholder, right? So in other words, something that is let's say a marketing-based podcast or blog or something like that is probably has more potential value to me than it does to someone who's in sports or in banking or something like that. And so that's where we start taking the two aspects of value, right? How is our catalog perform over time? And, you can look at a Bob Dylan, or you can look at a Ryan Tedder's catalog and go, great. How did those songs perform? Were they number one hits? Did they sell a lot of copies, et cetera? And you can associate a value. But if I'm buying Bob Dylan's catalog and I'm Universal Music Group and I go, the potential value there for me is I have movies, I can license this to, I have video games, I have all sorts of ways I can monetize that value in a different way than anybody else can. Well, it's worth more. And both of those aspects are worth considering as we think about our white papers and webinars and email newsletters, et cetera. Yeah, right. Maybe we weren't good at the value of creating marketing, or maybe we were okay or mediocre at delivering value to our own sales efforts of our webinars and our email newsletters and our educational university that we launched and all that kind of stuff. But maybe somebody else, the potential value, maybe somebody else can make much better hay with it. And so it's that value we need to recognize. It's not just in how many leads did it produce. It's also in its rarity and its quality, et cetera, that can deliver potential value to someone else.
Yeah, I think this is a fact.
I know it's not a concept to think about right now, but I think it will become increasingly important.
Yeah, it's fascinating because, well, there's two parts to this in my head. One of those is that normally people buy these things for the audience and not for the content. So I think that, when you think about a Bob Dylan back catalogue, you're thinking about the content. You're not, and then you're thinking about how you can, you apply that to the audience. Whereas I think that in our business, we only think about the audience. We don't think about the value of the content, how we might be able to make a better use of that asset than the previous owner did. So I think that's interesting.
That's right. Think about it from this. So we've taken great pleasure at laughing at the quickie service.
Yeah.
Which, is obviously, going under and didn't build an audience at all, really, and really struggled with their financial model and all of that.
Yeah.
And it looks like, I think it's Hulu or
Roku
is going to purchase all of that content. And there's there's a potential value that they have there, right? For that catalog of content, because they can make better use of it for their audience, right? It becomes their particular usage of it gives them a bit of a unique valuation on that content.
Yeah. And then the other point I was thinking as you were talking is something I heard from one of your chums, Andy Crestadina, who was talking about if you're writing a blog or doing something like, think about the body of work. So if we are intentional about building something of value from the start, like we're building our own Bob Dylan back catalogue, and we think about the value of what we're creating, that changes your mindset, I guess, from being, creating these one-off little things to actually thinking about what's this body of work going to be worth after 2 years of me working at it. So that's a different way of thinking about it, I guess, with that same thought, do you think?
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Which is, how much more valuable is it if it's a true body of work rather than just an amalgam of assets, right?
Yeah. And then I had a third thought, which has just escaped my mind because I got a bit distracted there by what you were saying. But oh yes, I know. Also, I'm thinking that, if you've ever tried to search for a podcast or look around the podcasting sort of ecosystem, what's around, and you look for a content marketing podcast, as I was earlier on, and the top one is like 4 years old and stuff. And I think that in the media space that we play in with podcasts, but also as B2B marketers, trying to capture the attention of the same audience, there's going to be a roll-up on this, isn't there? That other people are going to start taking that attention. And unless we value our content, and unless we start rolling up these things into something that can compete with these big guys, am I making any sense?
We're
going to need to understand the value of that.
You are. Well, I think the lesson there is to make a conscious decision about it, right?
Yeah.
In other words, I think what happens so often now is that we look at content as simply a byproduct of something else we're doing, right?
Yes.
And what ends up happening is that as a byproduct of sales, or as a byproduct of marketing or PR or comms or whatever the function in the business is, and this content that we create is just the stuff that falls on the cutting room floor, basically, right? It's just a byproduct, basically. Some of it's useful and some of it's not. And if it helps me do this thing in this one time for this one, great. But otherwise, it just there's the only reason we're hanging on to it is to because it's digital and it's easy to hang on to, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just stacks of, how many businesses still have stacks of their old magazine stacked away in a, back closet somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And the value of that is not at all, right? That they would look at it. And the reason is because it was considered a byproduct when it was first created. It wasn't considered a strategic product or a strategic asset for the business. And so it was never treated that way. So thus it will never be that way.
Yeah.
And so it's a bit of a, I don't know, catch-22 is the right way to phrase it, but it's if we don't treat it as a strategic approach, it will never be one. And so if we desire and want to make a conscious choice to make our content and body of work in that content an asset to the business that's worth valuing, well, then we have to treat it as such.
Yeah. No, I love this. I mean, I've so much follow on from this. I think this is a fascinating topic, but basically, I need to finish this drink and this conversation. That's splendid. Thank you, Robert. To think about the value of our content in that way is fascinating. And also to make the point that you were rather kindly referring to my blog with hovering over the back button. Thank you very much, and to Rockstar CMO for the listeners that aren't aware of those wonderful publications. Robert, and you've talking of podcasting and having your own media publication. You and Joe are back to weekly, and I mentioned it last week of your podcast. Where can people find that?
Well, thank you for asking. The podcast itself can be found at our little show notes, and our little home on the internet is a shiny new little website that we have called thisoldmarketing.site. And the .site domain is brought to us by our wonderful little sponsor, Radix, which we're happy to have partnered with for them. And then, we're publishing weekly now. And so we're on a weekly cadence every Friday morning. We're there with a new episode.
Excellent. And when people spin the dial on the interwebs, where do they find you, Robert?
Oh, I'm everywhere. I'm just everywhere. You can't not find me on the internet. I am sadly dominant on the front page of Google for the search of Robert Rose. I'm sure makes the other Robert Roses out there so annoyed. But I am on LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter. Would love to connect with people there, obviously. And then, of course, our little website is contentadvisory.net.
And I will, of course, include all those links in the show notes. Thank you very much, Robert. And will I see you in the bar next week?
You will indeed.
I look forward to it. Thank you, Robert. So what's your content worth? Certainly that bit of content from Robert is worth a thought and a great way to think about our content marketing. So that's a wrap on episode 46 of the Rockstar CMO effing Marketing Podcast. Thanks again to my friends, Jeff, Cathy and Robert for joining me, but most of all, thank you for dropping a dime into your podcasting jukebox, selecting our track and driving along with us. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you like my guests, please click their links, follow them, take a look at their work and share it. I really appreciate their time. Of course, I will include all their links in the show notes at rockstarcmo.com/podcast or our shiny new podcast website, rockstarcmo.fm, where you can also find all our previous episodes. So, does the world need another effing marketing podcast? Please let me know what you think. Leave a review, subscribe, share, get in touch, or just keep listening. I'm glad you're here. Next week, Jeff and I will be discussing another one-hit wonder or Wonderwall. I'm chatting to Jeff Swan, business development expert from RevUp90. And as we are still in lockdown, I hope to find my friend Robert Rose in our virtual Rockstar CMO bar. Until then, I've been your host, Ian Truscott, founding editor of rockstarcmo.com, and I hope you'll again join us next week here at Rockstar CMO FM.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Christy Heiler hosts a fantastic podcast called Own It. Christy, tell us more about the show.
Own It is all about celebrating women and non-binary advertising agency owners. We talk about buying out of the Boys Club of Advertising because less than 1% of ad agencies are owned by women.
And where can people subscribe?
You can find the podcast at untilyouownit.com. We're also on the Marketing Podcast Network at marketingpodcast.net. And of course, you can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard her. Go subscribe. This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.